Good day, fellow clanmates. This is LJ the Warrior speaking from the tops of High Rock, and I welcome you all back to episode number 4 of this Warrior Cats podcast. In the last episode, I talked mainly about Blue Star's prophecy and how my opinions on Blue Star were at one point really high, but after reading more about her and just getting to know the series as a whole, they dwindled quite a bit. Blue Star's prophecy, as it does have a special place in my heart, just simply how I got the book and everything surrounding me reading it for the first couple times, my opinions on it, and what I think, the quality of the book itself, it has changed quite a bit. But now I'm going to talk to you about something that, something that I thought at the beginning was a certain way, and the way I thought about it then, it's only grown and grown and grown. And that is a certain amount of frustration towards a certain character in the series. And that character is, it's Squirrel Flight. Yeah, Warriors fans, if anyone watching this podcast, besides my teacher, has ever read Warrior Cats, you guys know Squirrel Flight. Come on, you gotta know Squirrel Flight. Squirrel Flight is the most overrated character in the series, and it's not even close. It's not even remotely close, because the fans, they absolutely love Squirrel Flight. I went on Warriors to meet him for the first time in 6-7 months, a couple weeks back. And I was looking at everyone's bios, and in every single person's bio, it said one of their favorite characters, if not their most most favorite character was Squirrel Flight. And I cannot believe it. If you watch Bright Guardian Akira's favorite character in the series is Squirrel Flight. I cannot. And Moon Kitty, if you know Moon Kitty's favorite character in the series is Squirrel Flight. And it's at least, I don't know. Actually, I don't know if that's Moon Kitty's favorite character, but Moon Kitty does love Squirrel Flight, and just so many people in the community love Squirrel Flight. And I don't get how they do. Actually, I do get how they do, but I'll get into that later. But mainly, I think what we're going to start first is we're just going to give us some background on Squirrel Flight, because I know definitely my teacher will be saying this, and maybe to anyone else who's just watching this podcast for the first time or still don't really know much about Warriors. I'm just going to give some background on Squirrel Flight as a character, just so her storyline, without any bias or anything. Squirrel Flight was born in the epilogue of Firestar's quest. Of course, she, according to, the timeline of Warriors and, the order that the books came out, Squirrel Flight doesn't actually make an appearance until Midnight, which is the first book in the second arc, the New Prophecy. But she is the youngest in the epilogue of Firestar's quest, which, of course, she's very newborn. She's a newborn. And she is born, she is the birth creation, her and her sister Leafpool. They are the creation of Firestar and Sandstorm. Firestar is the leader of ThunderClan. He had just gotten back with his mate Sandstorm after they literally went and put together a whole new clan. And then they come back and she's pregnant and whatever, and then so they have kids, of course. And so anyway, so that's basically, she's born to them. She becomes an apprentice right before Midnight. Her mentor is Dustpelt. And right from the get-go, she argues with Brambleclaw quite a bit. Of course, you'll hear Brambleclaw a lot. But they argue quite a bit, and eventually, Squirrel Flight, she was named Squirrel Paw at the time. Squirrel Paw hears about how Brambleclaw is thinking about sneaking off and whatever, because he has this prophecy. Blue Star came to him in a dream and everything. And Squirrel Flight wants to go too. Squirrel Flight's trying to convince Brambleclaw, hey, come on, please let me go. And eventually, Squirrel Flight blackmails him and basically says, all right, you know what? I'll tell Firestar what's going on unless you take me. So eventually he convinced Squirrel Paw. Squirrel Paw convinces Brambleclaw to go. And so they go on the journey. Squirrel Paw and Brambleclaw end up getting very, very close with one another. And then they come back And Squirrel Paw becomes like when they come back, she and the cats that were chosen to go on the quest to, well, they call it the journey to the Sundrown place, but they basically walk all the way to an ocean. They walk all the way to the ocean to find a badger. And, well, she, along with the other cats from each clan that was chosen, they ended up convincing their leaders and everyone to come together. And then so begins what they like to call the Great Journey, which is when they go from the forest territories to the territories where they currently reside to this day, at the lake. And when they all arrive at the lake, I think the first thing that happens was, or one of the first things that happens after, no, I can't remember if it was before or after Tallstar's death, but Squirrel Flight was given her official warrior name, which is Squirrel Flight, so she becomes Squirrel Paw to Squirrel Flight. And then she is chosen along with Crowfeather, Tawny Pelt, Stormfur, and Misty Foot, I believe. No, not Stormfur, because Stormfur stays in the Trap of Rushing Water. So yeah, it's Brambleclaw, Squirrel Flight, Tawny Pelt, Crowfeather, and Misty Foot. And they go scout and scour the lake territory. They go walk around and they see how everything's going and everything, just to see, oh, maybe Shadow Clan can live here and Wind Clan can live there, and hey, this might be like a problem for the clans later or something like that. Anyway, so yeah, they basically scout the territory and then they come back. And then after that, Squirrel Flight really doesn't do all that much. She doesn't do that much for a couple books. She mainly just argues with Brambleclaw for a couple more books. She argues with them, and then Ashfur comes into the picture, and then Ashfur tries to get with Squirrel Flight. They get pretty close, but then Squirrel Flight sees that Brambleclaw is about to become deputy because Brambleclaw told Squirrel Flight about the sign that Brambleclaw received. That said he should probably become deputy, and then so Squirrel Flight chooses Brambleclaw over Ashfur. And then so, despite the fact that they argue a lot, they manage to patch everything together, and then now they are officially, guess technically, the term's mates, but I guess like it's pretty much just husband and wife. They pretty much got married. And so after that, Squirrel Flight has come to in a dream by ThunderClan and ShadowClan's former medicine cat Yellowfang, and she is basically told that she will never ever have babies of her own. Pretty much that she's barren. They told her that she's infertile. But just at the time when she heard that she was infertile, she heard that her sister Leafpool, who was a medicine cat, is pregnant, which. The thing is with medicine cats is that it is strictly forbidden in the warrior society that medicine cats cannot have children. It is strictly forbidden. And if you do have, if a medicine cat does have kids, like they are like reprimanded from society. Like they are hated on so much. And just to make it worse, that she got pregnant with a guy from another clan, which is also really frowned upon. At least it is at the time. Nowadays, that's steadily changing, but that's a topic for a different day. But yeah, so not only is she a medicine cat having kids, but it's with a guy from another clan, which was a big deal. So Squirrel Flight tells Leafpool, he's like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to try to hide it as much as possible, and basically you're going to give birth to them outside the clans, and then we're all going to come back and we're going to say that, hey, it's my clan, and it's like, hey, it's my kids with Brambleclaw. And then that works. It works. That happens. It works until the 5th book in Power 3, when Squirrel Flight is threatened by Ashfur at the famous fire scene. I'm actually doing a book analysis paper on that book, where Ashfur says that he was so heartbroken that Squirrel Flight rejected him just because Brambleclaw was getting ready to become deputy. And so he is so like upset and heartbroken about it that he threatens to kill Squirrel Flight and her 3 kits, which were Jayfeather, Lionblaze, and Hollyleaf. And well, Squirrel Flight says, he's like, all right, fine, you can take them because they're not mine. And then after that, Ashfur lets them go. And then he was gonna go reveal to everyone that's like, hey, Squirrel Flight and Brambleclaw are not your guys' parents. He's gonna reveal to everyone at the gathering. But he mysteriously gets murdered, which later they find out that it would be Hollyleaf. And then after that, it leads to a very a lot of arguing, in Power of Three with, of course, everything that happened with Brambleclaw. Then the truth came out, and Squirrelflight admitted to her lies and everything. And then after that, her and Brambleclaw got divorced. And so they argued and everything, and, well, that went on pretty much for most of Almond of the Stars until Lion Blaze, Jay Feather, and Dovewing revealed the prophecy, and then they waited like a year and a half, but they finally decided to talk everything out. And so they talked everything out, and then after Firestar dies, Brambleclaw, of course, who was still the deputy, ends up becoming leader, and he names Squirrelflight his deputy. And in between the 4th and the 5th story arc, Squirrelflight ends up having kits, which she had 4 kits. One of them died shortly after birth. Another one died about 1 month old. And the other 2 kits are currently Alderheart and Sparkpelt, who are alive and well up to the current timeline of the series. And then after that, she gets jealous at Bramblestar because he was talking to this kitty pet named Jessie. And honestly, there's actually a lot more, because Ashfur comes back. She gets dragged into the moon pool because Ashfur comes back from the dead. She gets dragged in the moon pool, but before that, she got kicked out. I just realized that'd be really, really hard for me to explain the whole story of Squirrelflight, and I'm 11 minutes into this recording. So pretty much, that's everything that you need to know for what I'm going to talk about. Okay? Actually, no, I need to talk about her Super Edition, Squirrelflight's Hope. In her Super Edition, Squirrelflight's Hope, mainly it's a lot of arguing with Bramblestar. There's this group of rogues that live closely outside clan territory. They are called the Sisters. And Skyclan, the clan that her father Firestar founded, they ended up somehow finding their way to the lake territories, which was pretty crazy. And, well, originally they stayed in between ThunderClan and SkyClan, but everything that was going on in ShadowClan, it just wasn't going to work. So SkyClan, they needed to find a new territory for SkyClan, and they thought that would be a good place. But the thing is, the Sisters were there, so it screwed everything up. And pretty much, Bramblestar doesn't approve of the Sisters. A lot of the leaders don't approve of the Sisters. They want to kick them out. But the thing is, their leader, Moonlight, was her name. She is pregnant with kits, and it's like, hey, yo, do you see how pregnant she is? It's like, bro, we can't kick them out now because she's about to have babies. Like, we cannot kick her out when she's this far along. But some of them were saying that, like Squirrelflight was probably the main leader in that charge. But the leaders were like, no, because we cannot take this, because SkyClan, like, it's just not working. Especially because ShadowClan was pretty much doing like terrorist attacks on Sky. ShadowClan was pretty much launching mini terrorist attacks onto SkyClan because it was just not working, them being there. And so eventually it leads to this big scene. Squirrelflight keeps on going behind Bramblestar's back to talk to the Sisters and make sure that they're okay, and it leads to this big scene where the clans have finally had enough because Moonlight hasn't given birth yet. So they end up going there to drive them out. But while they're being driven out, Squirrelflight realizes that Moonlight's about to give birth and everything. And then she and Leafpool go try to save her from a rock slide. And Leafpool ends up dying and Squirrelflight almost dies. But she goes to StarClan. And they get like this whole like judgmental thing because they broke the code severely. But they ended up realizing that Leafpool's okay to go to StarClan, and Squirrelflight actually has the option to go back to the living world where she does. And then that pretty much begins the thing of everything with Ashfur. She gets kicked out, she comes back, becomes leader of ThunderClan and Bramblestar's place because his body's possessed. And then she gets dragged underneath the moon pool, and that's kind of the story of Squirrelflight up to current day. Probably really confusing, I know, but literally for me to explain everything to where you weren't confused would take prior knowledge to the series and about 45 minutes. So that was a brief, 12 and a half minute description of Squirrelflight. Now, I'm pretty much just going to go over a couple key points to why I don't like Squirrelflight, and then I'll get into the fandom's reception of her. So really, from birth, Squirrelflight is just spoiled from the start because Firestar and Sandstorm just came back from this really, really big quest, and they're honored and loved and everything, and everyone's so excited to have them back. It's, oh my god, look, they're having kids and everything. And then so Squirrel Flight's treated like the little princess that, well, technically she is from the start. Yeah, and it was pretty, so she had everything handed to her. She got whatever she wanted. Nobody ever really told her no because she was Firestar's daughter. Like, you can't say no to that because then you'll get in trouble. And then that leads to her just pretty much being rude and being really, really loud and obnoxious to everybody because she knows she gets what she wants. She knows that she gets what she wants. And then so that just leads to a really, really snappy attitude. And, well, she forces herself onto the journey to the Sundrown place. She did not need to go at all, right? She was not chosen to go. Pretty much one cat from every clan in Star was chosen to go on this journey. And, well, Squirrel, and they would send them dreams, and Squirrel Flight was not one of the cats who received a dream. But she ended up going with Brambleclaw anyway. She just argued with him a bunch and eventually blackmailed him to the point where it's like, fine, you have to go. Which is just not right. Like, she wasn't chosen by StarClan. She couldn't have done that anyway. But she knows that she gets what she wants. She blackmails and manipulates Brambleclaw into getting what she wants. Which is pretty just ridiculous, in my opinion. It's like, you're not chosen on the journey. Just don't go, okay? Just keep your secret. It's really not that hard. And on the trip itself, I've had some discussions with fans about this, and for some reason, a lot of them like to say that Squirrel Flight was like this key piece on the trip, where it's like they really like Squirrel Flight is really what she was like the leader and everything, and like she was the one who called the shots, and she was the one that pumped everyone up and told everyone what to do, and then so I recently read Midnight Moonrise, which were the books that included the journey to the Sundrown place and the eventual trip back. And this is not true at all. Squirrel Flight's honestly kind of useless. Really, the only thing she does is keep Brambleclaw warm at night, pretty much. And she gets stuck underneath a fence. And she yells at Crowfeather a lot. She does. Her and Crowfeather, I guess his name was Crowpaw at the time. But her and Crowfeather, they yell at each other a lot, which is interesting because Crowfeather ends up having her nieces and nephews, which is kind of weird. But anyway, yeah, that's just kind of funny. I've always thought that was funny how that all tied together. But yeah, so she really is useless on this trip. Like, in all actuality, she does nothing at all that no one else could have did, and really she just made everything worse for everyone else. Because she got stuck underneath the fence. That was probably her most eventful event. That's probably the most eventful thing that she did on this trip, not even joking, was she got stuck underneath a fence. And I mean, I don't know about you, but when you're trying to save all the clans because they're starving and everything, and their whole camp and all their territories is getting destroyed by, like, bulldozers, getting stuck underneath a fence is not going to help you out very much. And, I mean, and then she argues with Brambleclaw a lot, which a lot of people like to say, okay, slight trigger warning, I'm going to get into abusive relationships. That's going to be something I talk about, definitely. I'm definitely going to really touch on abusive relationships, and I'm going to talk about that. So if that triggers you in any way, just a little disclaimer. Warrior Cats does have some mature topics. Hopefully you know that by now. But she argues with Brambleclaw a lot. Like, a lot. Like, it is, like, scary how much they argue. And a lot of fans like to point out, they like to paint this picture that Squirrel Flight is just this perfect little angel, and what she thinks she is one, and that Brambleclaw is just this mentally and emotionally abusive, like, almost cheating, like, boyfriend, husband, who just makes Squirrel Flight feel terrible all the time. I'm trying not to cuss here, honestly. I think me using my regular vocabulary would be a lot easier describing this, but no, we're keeping it PG. We're keeping it PG for the school channel. So, bear with me. Because especially if I have phrases where, like, I just don't say anything, I'm trying to find words without, like, cussing or anything. Which, that goes to my vocabulary, but you know me. And, well, that's just simply not true, okay? And I'm not saying that Brambleclaw isn't doing anything, because he most certainly is. But a lot of arguments that are caused between the two is because Squirrelflight does something, or, maybe she says something she shouldn't have. And it's like, in Brambleclaw, he also does stuff that is out of line. But I'm sick and tired of the community thinking that Brambleclaw is just terrible, which he's not good. Don't get me wrong, he's not good. But Squirrelflight is just as bad as Brambleclaw is in pretty much every single situation. And then, not only this, but she did lie to everyone. She lied to Brambleclaw for years, and she would have continued to lie if they didn't get exposed. She would have continued to lie if no one ever found out about it. She would have continued to lie. She would have lied to her husband for a very, very long time, through the rest of their lives, if they didn't end up getting caught, pretty much. And then, not only that, but, the biggest reason why I don't like Squirrelflight is probably because in Warriors, loyalty is considered the number one thing in the series, I think, honestly. Loyalty to your clan, loyalty to your friends, loyalty to your kin, or the people or loyalty to everyone you're related to, and loyalty to your lovers. Or just being loyal in general is a really, really big thing. Loyalty is not even joking, loyalty is one of the number one things in Warrior Cats, right? So she promises Leafpool that, she's like, hey, Leafpool, it's okay, all right? I understand this, you're going under a lot of stress, this is so terribly traumatic for you. Unplanned pregnancy is so terribly traumatic, especially with the fact that it's with Crowfeather, who's a Wind Clan cat, you're a ThunderClan cat, and even worse, you're a ThunderClan Medicine Cat. It's this is literal, this is awful for you. So Squirrelflight's like, hey, it's okay, I'll keep your secret. And, dying for your clan, dying for your husband or wife, dying for your spouse, dying for your sons and daughters or your family members, dying for your clan is really, really honored, right? Cats have done it several times in the series. In fact, most of the cats who die in the series die defending their clan or being loyal to their clan in some way. I could really use Firestar, for example. Her father dies defeating Tigers. He died while defeating Tigerstar in the Great Battle. He went out heroically. And he died defending ThunderClan. And he saved ThunderClan, because if he lost that battle, then really Tigerstar's rampage continues, and who knows if they win the Great Battle or not. What Squirrelflight does is Squirrelflight freaks out because she realizes she might die, so she throws Leafpool under the bus. She absolutely betrays Leafpool. And anytime I talk to Warrior Cats fans, they just glaze over this like it's no big deal at all. And it's like they just don't talk about it. They don't talk about the fact that Squirrelflight absolutely betrays Leafpool. She gave up her biggest secret, and literally Holly Leaf, which is Leafpool's daughter, tries to get Leafpool to commit suicide. Holly Leaf is so distraught at the fact that her mother is a medicine cat, a ThunderClan medicine cat, and her father's a guy from a different clan, because she is so strong with the warrior code. She is so distraught by it that she tries to get Leafpool to commit suicide. And it's all of that not only that, but Leafpool loses her job as a medicine cat. Firestar forces Leafpool to become a warrior for a whole story arc. Because, do you realize what she did? And she made Leafpool's life hell. She made her life so bad for years just because she wanted to save her own skin. Which, that is just terrible. That's just a terrible move as a sister. I argue with my sister sometimes. But, I would never, ever do that to them in any way whatsoever. And I think that just goes to show how bad of a character Squirrelflight is. That the fact that Squirrelflight would literally ruin Leafpool's life for multiple years. Because she knows how severe it was. She knows that she lied, and I don't think she was thinking, but she threw herself under the bus too. And multiple times, also, by the way, she tries to justify her actions, but not Leafpool. She was like, why am I getting in trouble? I'm not the one who did it. I just lied to everybody. And it's I always thought that was funny. Because there have been multiple times where she's tried to reverse her punishment, but not Leafpool's. She's like, but I literally didn't do anything. All I did was lie to everyone, and I thought I would get away with it. And yeah, I just think, again, that's just even more awful. But Now, I need to spend a couple minutes here talking about Squirrel Flight's hope. Now, this is really where people realized that the Squirrel Flight and Bramble Star relationship is absolutely terrible. But a lot of people, in fact, pretty much everybody besides me, I think I've met like one or two other people who have agreed with me with this, that a lot of just people in the community have pretty much just unanimously decided, mainly because Bright Guardian Akira and Moon Kitty shoved this down everyone's throats, that Bramble Star is really abusive, and he just is so mean to Squirrel Flight and beats her down so much that they just shouldn't be together. Which I'm going to be honest here. Bramble Star is bad. Like, Bramble Star, he is abusive towards Squirrel Flight, emotionally, of course. There's no mental abuse in that. I mean, there's no physical abuse in that book, thank God. But Squirrel Flight is just ridiculous. Like, I think there's a point, because the Super Edition is in her point of view. And there are the victimized and the victimizers. And Squirrel Flight, since it's told in her point of view, and it's her thought, and everything is in her thoughts and throughout her perspective, she doesn't want to be seen. Nobody wants to be a victimizer, right? So you want to kind of come off as the victimized. And it's like she's trying to justify to the readers in her Super Edition that she's perfect, and she fools almost everybody with it. But their relationship is mutually toxic. They are mutually abusive towards each other, and people just refuse to believe me. And it's like, I brought up, it's like, listen here, okay? So the whole thing in Squirrel Flight's Hope, the whole arguing and abuse towards those two, it really just starts at the beginning, where they have this gathering, and Squirrel Flight talks out of turn and interrupts Bramble Star on an issue. I don't even remember what it was. I don't know if it was I think it happens before the sisters, but I could be wrong. And pretty much, Bramble Star is leader. He has the authority over Squirrel Flight, who is deputy, which is second in command because it's a hierarchy. And he has the authority over her. He is in the middle of talking and making a statement, and Squirrel Flight, who was below him on the power scale, on the power pyramid, just interrupts him. Just interrupts him in the middle of talking. And clearly it's like, she thinks because she's his mate, she'll get away with it. And Brambleclaw's like, what are you doing? I was in the middle of talking. And it's like, she just wanted to disagree so she could get some attention and everyone could hear her point. And that's really just what it starts with. And it's like, you are below Bramble Star on the strand of power, like the power line, like the ranks of power. You are underneath him. It's just because he's your mate, he's still the leader of ThunderClan, and he puts ThunderClan first. He puts his clan first. You're second. And they were discussing. He was speaking on what was best for ThunderClan, and he was upset that Squirrel Flight interrupted him. And Squirrel Flight tries to defend herself, and she takes it the wrong way. She takes it the wrong way. And she thinks that just Bramble Star just thinks she's dumb and her opinion doesn't matter. When literally she interrupted him in the middle of talking while she's below him, on the power-wise, which is ridiculous. Again, fans, they refuse to point out that. Another thing that they refuse to point out is the fact that you need to follow clan orders. One of the things in the Warrior Code, which is the Warrior Cats and the clan set of laws, is that a leader's word is law. Okay, what the leader says goes, pretty much. The clan leader's word is law. I think that's the official wording for it. I could be wrong. But Squirrel Flight, multiple times, because she is deputy, and because she is the mate to the leader, she frequently goes behind his back to do whatever she wants. She goes and talks to the sisters. She crosses over into Shadow Clan territory. I think I remember one time she went all the way across the lake to River Clan without telling anyone while she's deputy, just to go talk to Mothwing about something. And it's like, that's just so ridiculous. Like, I don't get it. Like, it's, you do what he says. Like, you do what your leader says. But she is abusing her power as deputy, and she just thinks that she can get away with these things because she's always has got away with these things. And when Bramblestar points it out to her, he's like, hey, you can't do that. Just because we are these things, and just because, like, I love you and everything, it's like, that doesn't mean you can just take advantage of your position, because I gave you that position, okay? I gave you that position, and if I wanted to, I could take it away. But no, because I think you are legitimate for this spot, and I love you, so you're like my wife and everything. It's like, but you just cannot be abusing your power like this. And again, Squirrel Flight takes it the wrong way, like she's just getting absolutely reprimanded by him. And then again, she just starts moping around and crying to the readers about this. And then another thing is, she brings up having a second litter of kids, which to me is like the most ridiculous thing ever. Like, why? You're like, in Warrior Cat's perspectives, I think like in human timeline, Squirrel Flight's like 45, 50 years old, because she's pretty old now. Like at the time of that book, she was like 45, 50 years old. Why do you, like, would, excluding the Bible, of course, Sarah and Abraham having kids at 90 and 100, but who do you know nowadays, like, frequently has kids at 45 and has kids at around 50, or like somewhere in there? Exactly, nobody. And that was so ridiculous. And Bramblestar tells her that this is so ridiculous, and again, she just takes it as like the super reprimandative way, and just absolutely mopes around about it. Which a lot of people, they sympathize with her about it. And it's ridiculous, really. Because the fact is, people ignore, because they refuse to look at the situation in a different light, because it is set through Squirrel Flight's point of view, and she tries to justify everything that she does, right? And she tries to make it seem to the readers, because it's in her point of view, that everything that she does is right, when simply it is not. And, well, I'm kind of out of time here. This podcast is going to run over half an hour, and I apologize. But, yeah, that pretty much wraps up this video. I could go on longer, so don't be surprised if I make a part 2 to this. But, yeah, that's pretty much going to wrap this episode up. Episode 5 will be out within the next couple of weeks. But, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. That'll just about wrap it up. Make sure you guys have a wonderful day. And as always, may StarClan light your path.